Hey everyone, this is Darkstar. Today we're going to go ahead and work through the room Blue on TryHackMe. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into it. First and foremost here, I've gone ahead and navigated to the room page. This can be done by going to the activities page and then just looking for Blue. Then we're going to go ahead and start with task 1 here. So I've gone ahead and already deployed the box in this specific case, and you can see that I've got my IP up here. You'll need to click on this deploy button when you first start this room. So getting into task 1, the first thing that we need to do is scan the actual machine. In case you want a little bit more experience playing with the tool that we're going to use for this, I do recommend checking out the room RP Nmap. But without further ado, here we go. We're going to go ahead and scan it with this exact Nmap script. So I've gone ahead and already run this just for the sake of time, because this can take a little bit. The big thing that's going to take a little bit of time is this script vuln that actually runs all of the vulnerability check scripts within the Nmap scripting engine in coordination with the other things that we're seeing here. So this is the service version flag and then the common scripts flag. This is going to give us a pretty good picture of this box. And then it also will output to the blue.mmap file that I've gone ahead and created. That being said, when you're doing this, make sure you don't use the IP, the IP that I've set in this case. Make sure that you actually have the IP for your specific box that is spun up. So, as I said, I've gone ahead and run that. Let's go ahead and take a look at that file. So here we can see that this is pretty normal Nmap output. We do have a number of ports that are open on the box. So first and foremost, we can see Samba is open here. Then we've got RDP that's open as well, which, because this box is vulnerable to what we're going to see in a moment, it's also vulnerable to Blue Keep here down at the bottom. Let's go ahead and scroll down though, because that's not quite what we're looking for. If we go down to the bottom, we can see that this is vulnerable to MS1710. Now, this vulnerability is still out in the wild. This is very, very common to see just because of legacy systems that are hanging around. Odds are, if you have a Windows 7 host in your environment, it's probably vulnerable to it if you haven't updated it in a while. So this is a vulnerability within the SMB v1 service that allows us to get remote code execution. And we're going to go ahead and leverage that to actually gain entry into this machine. So going back to the room, so we've scanned the machine. How many ports are open with a number under 1,000? So if we scroll back up, we have 3 ports that are open under 1,000. And then what is this machine vulnerable to? MS1710. Let's go ahead and move into the second section here. So first, we're going to go ahead and start Metasploit. We can do that with the command msf console. And note, this does link to another room, specifically on Metasploit, if you want a little bit more practice with what we're going through. I do recommend doing that room either before this room or after this room. It just depends on how comfortable you are with Metasploit at this current moment. So, find the exploitation code that we will run against the machine. What is the full path of the code? So, we've already seen in the previous step that this machine is vulnerable to MS1710. Let's go ahead and use the search command to search for MS17. And we're going to get a number of results, and we can actually make this a little bit neater by doing search for Eternal Blue. And it's actually going to bring up exactly what we're looking for. So in this specific case, we're going to go ahead and use this exploit, and we can see that that is the answer for number 2 to gain access to this machine. Let's go ahead and type use, and this is a nice little shortcut you can use in Metasploit that lets you just type in the number for your result here, and it will have it selected. So with that, our next question is, show options and set the one required value. What is the name of the value? So let's go ahead and see what options we have. So we're not going to change anything down here with the exploit target or our payload. We're just going to use the default one for now. However, we can see at the top, we need to set what our actual target is. So setting the rhost here. Let's go ahead and do that. This is going to be the IP that you're targeting. So we'll set rhost, and we'll scroll back up just a little bit to 10.10.73.63. And then we'll go ahead and run that. Now this should work. Sometimes if you run this exploit multiple times against a machine, it won't necessarily like what you're doing. If that ever happens, just go through and restart the machine. In this specific case, you can terminate the machine on TryHackMe and just restart it. Let's see if this one's actually going to run through. If not, we'll go ahead and kill the machine and spin it back up. Because this machine has almost nothing on it, doesn't take very long to turn back on. And we'll give it a second here. So, as we can see with this, just a brief overview of what we're looking at with the Eternal Blue exploit. This is a pool corruption, so a memory corruption issue within Samba that causes us to do a buffer overflow. So here we can see a fail. In this case, it's actually not going to work, and it's great that you're seeing this for the video because odds are you might see this happen within the room. This is an exploit that works most of the time. However, like all exploits, it's not actually meant to work. We're doing something that's not designed to work in the first place. So we're going to go ahead and terminate the machine, go back into task 1. And there is one other point within this room that this can happen. We'll get to that in just a moment. But we're going to go ahead and restart it. And we'll set our host value to the new box IP after we move it up just a smidge so we can actually read it. And we'll give it just a moment to continue spinning up, just because we want to make sure that all services have completely started on this machine. So getting back to the actual question, our host is the one value that we needed to put in. So in this case, it's our host now. Metasploit actually originally when this room came out only had the our host value for it. Since this is so common to come across, they've changed it to the our host value, just because it's good to be able to run against multiple machines at once. There are some other tools that you can use to run that as well against multiple machines, but Metasploit's nice and easy. And then we're going to give it a moment. Looks like it's not quite set up, and you can either use the run command or the exploit command to run this. Sometimes that makes it a little bit easier to just type run because it's significantly shorter. And even then, let's go ahead. So sometimes we can have issues with that port still listening from our previous exploit. Show options, set L port 4445, and then let's try running it now. Wow, it is not having it today. Okay, we're up. One more time. There we go. Now it's going. Now there's a small chance that we've already butchered the service a little bit because we've attempted this exploit, but we should be good. However, because I'm recording this, odds are it probably won't work. Oh, there we go. Perfect. So we've got our win there, and we are now greeted with a Windows prompt, which doesn't seem quite right because, well, we're running a Linux system right now, right? So we're going to go ahead and Control-Z to background this session because as it stands, the Windows command prompt is useful, but it's not really going to help us that much in this situation. We're actually going to go ahead and switch over to a Meterpreter session. So with this, there's a couple ways that we can do this, and I'm going to show you how to do it the more verbose way. You can also use this command. So after listing your sessions with the actual sessions command, you can do sessions tech u and then the session number, and that will also do what we're about to do, which is upgrading our shell to a Meterpreter session. However, we're going to go ahead and use the post multi-manage shell to Meterpreter. This is a more verbose way of doing what we're about to do, but it's good to understand specifically what we're doing in this case. So once we've gone ahead and selected that, let's see what sessions we need to, or what settings we need to set. In this specific case, and we can see this for question number 2, we're required to change the session setting. This is telling it what session we're actually going to upgrade. We're going to go ahead and set that, and then once that is set, we can go ahead and run that. This is going to attempt to upgrade our session from just a normal... Oh, there we go. Took a moment. From just a normal Windows command line to an interpreter that's going to give us a lot more functionality. Let's go ahead, maybe, and list our sessions. So we should have a second one here, which we can see we are NT Authority System at John PC, the PC that we're attacking. One thing that's important to note here, we are running in a 64-bit interpreter, and our shell was... 32-bit interpreter, rather, and our shell was a 64-bit. That's usually indicative that we're attacking a 64-bit system, and that's going to cause problems later down the line, but we can go ahead and tackle that in a moment. So we'll go ahead and interact with that session here using the sessions tac I and then number 2 for the session that we've gone ahead and upgraded, and you can see that a little bit different prompt here. This is the interpreter prompt that we actually want to be working with. So list all the sessions to find your target here. Run. If this doesn't work, try completing the exploit from the previous task once more. So sometimes your upgrade won't necessarily go as planned, and it just means that your previous shell might not have been the greatest, and it might not have completed actually proccing in that specific case. Once the interpreter shell conversion completes, select that session for use. We've gone ahead and do that. So verify that we've escalated to NT System Authority. We can see that in the actual session information, but we can also check that with the get UID command, which is going to tell us that we are NT System Authority, which on Windows System, you are God. So pretty cool. And you can either do this via the get UID command, which is a little bit easier, or you can drop down to a shell, which is going to give us back our wonderful Windows command prompt, and type in who am I, and we're still System Authority. So let's go ahead, we'll background that channel so we can get back to our interpreter session and continue on. Verify that we've upgraded. Yep, we're at that. However, what we're going to go ahead and do, because the session that we started out with, that's not always the most stable, we're going to go ahead and migrate to a more stable process that is also going to match the architecture of our system. This is important because we're going to be dumping password hashes from the system by interrogating the LSASS process. If we don't match the architecture of that process, we can't talk to it. Let's go ahead and list out our processes now, though, because this will give us targets that we can actually migrate to. So scrolling up, we can see that we have all of the processes running on the system. So here on this left column is going to be realistically what we care about the most, is the process ID. Now, I love migrating to the spool service process. This is the printer process, and it always runs with NT System Authority and will always, always, always match the architecture of the system. Also, if you kill this, it will respawn, and you won't break your system, hopefully. So we're going to be migrating to 1276. That might vary a little bit depending on your machine. However, it's always going to be roughly that number. So migrate that command and then the process ID that you're migrating to. Note you need to have equivalent or higher permissions than the process that you're migrating to. In this case, we're migrating from a process that we have NT System Authority in to another process that is NT System Authority, so we keep our permission level the same. If you migrate down, you can't go back up. So we'll give this just a moment. Sometimes this can fail. Typically, it's pretty good to us, especially with the spool service. It's very well behaved. So we've gone ahead and migrated. We can verify using the get UID command that we still are System Authority. However, now we are living in the printer process. So we've gone ahead and migrated. That is that last item here. Now, since we've migrated, we can go ahead and do a little bit of cracking. So next, we're going to go ahead and use the command hash dump in Meterpreter. This is going to pull all of the password hashes off the system along with the user ID here. So here we can see our first question is actually, what is the name of the non-default user, which is our actual user on the system, because these two accounts, the administrator and guest, are both built into Windows. So we know that this John user is our non-default and the actual person that probably uses this computer. So here we've gone ahead and dumped the password hash for John. We can see if I jump over to my third tab here that I've gone ahead and saved that in this john.hash file, which we can see does match with what we just saw. So we can go ahead and use that for cracking. Now, if we go ahead and attempt to crack it, we can use this command, which is John the Ripper, to attempt that. So it's going to be John, then your actual hash file, and then the format that we're attacking, which this is an NT format for the password, and then your word list. However, we're not going to do show because we want to actually crack that. So we can go ahead and start that. So we can see that it's gone ahead and actually cracked because I've previously run this. And we'll remove that and then do show. So we can see with looking at this, we've gone ahead and cracked this password, which we can actually, because RDP is open on the system, authenticate to it with that if we really wanted to poke around a little bit more. So we can see that that password is the same here. Finally, let's go ahead and look into the flags for this machine. Now, because of the age of this machine, the flags are not in standard places where you think that they would live. They're not in the non-administrative user and then the administrative user desktops. Rather, they're a little bit scattered across the machine. That can make them a little bit harder to find. However, looking through common places on Windows, you can find them pretty quickly. Flag 1, we're going to go ahead and jump back to our interpreter session, check our present working directory, and we're going to move up a couple times until we are in the C directory. Now, this is a directory that you do need to have privileged access to, but it shows that you have access to the machine in this specific case. But looking into our actual listing, we can see that the flag.1 is listed here. So that's your first location. Moving back to the Windows directory, and then system32, and then config, and doing ls again, we can see that this is where flag 2 lives. This is actually where your SAM file lives, so that's actually where all of your passwords are stored in Windows. So you can find that in here. Note, this flag is the other instance where I mentioned that you might have to reboot this machine. There is a small issue where Windows really likes to delete this flag because this is a very touchy area. So important to note that if this flag is not here, double check what directory you're in. Make sure that you're actually in the Windows System32 config directory. If it's not there, reboot the machine, rerun the exploit, it'll be there. Otherwise, you can also see it on my screen, but make sure that you understand what you're doing here before you just grab flags. And then last but not least, flag 3 is actually in a standard location for the most part. If we go back up, one more time, there we go. CD users, because we're NT System Authority, we can now go into the administrator desktop. And LSA, list everything. Never mind. We're actually going to the John user because the John user is an administrator on this machine. There we go. And if we move into the documents folder, we can see that we have flag 3 here. So again, going through and emphasizing that you need to look through the documents folder and look through the desktop. You want to rifle through these things to see if there's anything valuable once you've exploited a machine like this. That way you can potentially find something that's going to give you additional leverage in the network, or maybe something else that is going to give you more situational knowledge of the machine that you're hacking. Otherwise, that's going to do it for Blue. Thank you guys for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to pop into the TryHackMe Discord and enjoy your hacking.